Hi there, and welcome to this next session at Optimize 24 AI. My name is Micheál McGrath. I'm the VP of Marketing here at VisibleThread. Thank you so much for joining this session. I hope you're enjoying today. This is our third talk of the whole agenda. If you're looking for the agenda, you can click the logo on the screen, and that'll bring you to our landing page with all the next upcoming sessions. Just a little housekeeping before we start. There's a Q&A box on screen. We want as many questions as possible. The first two sessions were great for engagement. We had lots of questions. These are all live sessions. So anything you want to ask Owen or Fergal, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll do our best to get to everything. All the sessions today are recorded and slides will be sent out. So you expect to see those next week. And the last thing I'll say is there is resources underneath this panel. If Fergal and Owen are going to share some details about what's coming in VT Writer and our upcoming products. If you'd like to book a one-to-one session and actually sit down with your company and talk to us, there's an opportunity to do that there in the console. And also there's some other resources there, including VT University and some of our latest case studies. So thank you very much for your attention. Feel free to use the attendee chat for networking and saying hello to the other audience. Let us know where you're coming from today. But most importantly, enjoy today's session and feel free to ask as many questions as you want. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Fergal McGovern, our CEO, and Owen Wren, our VP of Engineering.
Hey, thanks very much, Micheál. I appreciate the intro. Owen, do you want to say a few words, maybe kind of give a sense of your background and what you do at VisibleThread?
Thanks, Fergal. So I've been with VisibleThread for 14 years at this stage. So I manage product development here in the company. I'm really delighted to be here to have the opportunity to talk about what we're working on. It's a very exciting stage in our product evolution. And we feel that we are at a position to deliver some very extraordinary capability into the VisibleThread platform this year. So stay tuned.
Great, thanks, Owen. And for any of you who are on the first session of the kickoff here, my name is Fergal McGovern. I spoke a little bit there about elements around generative AI, the considerations. But I suppose my job in the company is really to kind of help set our vision and where we're going. So to work with Owen and his colleagues in engineering to really kind of serve you as customers and serve our customers generally. Great. So look, this is going to be a little bit more around product. There will be some slight repeats because when you talk about generative AI, you really need to kind of consider what the fundamental technology stack is and what it affords you as a business. So I'll get through some of that. But first, we'll do our usual thing of kind of asking some questions. And this helps us get a sense of you as an audience. And hopefully, we'll be able to tailor our spiel in consideration of your answers. So the first question I would love to know is just, different people have different views on this stuff, but are you evaluating just software generally, not generative AI specifically, but just software generally to help automate steps in your process? And if you might just go ahead and actually click yes or no, that would be really interesting. And again, this just helps us kind of understand where your heads are at. So go ahead and hit yes or no. So far, we don't have too many. Okay, now we're starting to see people click. That's great. Excellent. I'll just give it another 20 seconds or so, and we'll get a decent sense of whether you're actually thinking of automation. And again, most people, at least in our experience, are certainly looking for opportunities to automate. And the zeitgeist of generative AI has really kind of prodded that forward because most C-suite executives are looking for opportunities to optimize stuff. Good stuff. So we've got 41% answers, 45, great. Give it another 5 seconds. Perfect. Why don't we just go with that? So let's just see what the results of that are. So the answer is almost slight 2/3 yes, we're looking at automation opportunities, and 1/3 no. And for those of you who are in the no camp, I agree. I think sometimes you should be careful about what you're looking to automate and not rush into things. There's always a kind of a tendency to chase the pack. Obviously, whether you are or are not looking at automation, just do it with some degree of consideration. I'm not suggesting that you're not doing that, but there is a tend to rush to technology first approaches to automation. And I would caution and just suggest that it's always better to look at the problem you're trying to solve for initially, and then map it back to the tech that might actually solve it. And that applies to generative AI as well as anything more traditional in terms of computational models. Next question, again, this is really helpful. So I suppose for those 2/3 of you that are looking to automate, how many of you are looking at AI technology looking to support your current role? And by that, I mean, what's not necessarily using it to kind of find a recipe for, baking your cake at home. It's more, are you using it as almost an assistant in your day-to-day work? Obviously, the answers here are hopefully pretty self-explanatory. If you are using it in some format in the context of your work, yes. No, but you're open and possibly looking to use it. And maybe if you're a no, but looking to use it in that camp, you might be looking at the security implications of using Gen AI and a little concerned about proprietary data feeding into the public internet, etc. And then no and no plans to do so might well be that kind of final third of you. So let's just kind of give this a second. So we're ticking up on the answers. And I might just go ahead and actually click on the next one. Great. So interesting. So half of you are open to the idea and exploring it actively, which is really interesting. Slight dichotomy there between the 1/3 and the first question, not looking at automation at all, but at least half of you are open to look at it, because the no and no plans to do so, 8.1%, completely understandable. Now is maybe not the right time to be looking at that. And 40% of you are on the yes camp. So that's again really interesting. So in general, I suppose, Owen, we could kind of conclude that most people are certainly exploring or looking to actually apply this stuff and see the benefits of it. Final question. This really helps us understand the level at which we should speak at. Of course, you're a wide audience, but if you could rate your kind of awareness, let's say, of generative AI, 5 being very high. In other words, you're really comfortable with it. You feel like you understand things like LLMs and maybe even something esoteric like RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. Rate yourself a 5. If you're kind of, all you really know is here's a chatbot, and that's about the extent of it, maybe put yourself as 1. So again, love to get the answer on this one. Self-scoring is always interesting. Different people have different ways of calibrating their own capacity, but let's see where it goes. I'm at danger of going on about behavior psychology at this point, but I will not do that.
It's important to point out, Fergal, we won't be testing people on their responses.
Not at all. No. This is just simply to help Owen and myself just get the right level. Great. So we've got a decent uptick on the answers here, 40% or so. Let's just see what the results are. Okay, so nobody's gone a 5. Maybe I scared you all off because I mentioned RAG and LLMs. That probably set the bar. On the session this morning, I asked the exact same question. There were a fair number of 5s, but I didn't actually put the nuance of LLMs and the test questions. Okay, great stuff. So look, most people are in the middle. Not a huge surprise. This often, when we ask this question, it often becomes a little like a bell curve. Most people are in the middle somewhere. So that's perfect. Good. Look, we'll do our best to speak and hopefully not lose anyone. If we do, please feel free to reach out afterwards. Any of our staff can kind of help and set up, subsequent briefing sessions, etc. I've been doing a ton of these lately with our key accounts and customers, and love to keep that going because it helps us learn stuff as well about the specifics about your environment. Good. So this is my first section. I feel absolutely compelled to talk about security and hallucinations because before you even get out of the traps on generative AI, you have to consider security and you have to ask yourself some questions. You also have to understand a little bit more about what causes hallucinations. And why do we want you to understand that? Because this directly impacts what Owen and myself build within our product lines. And I'm overly inclusive there. I'm not building anything. It's Owen and his entire team. So there we go. Good. So let's consider security. And Owen, chip in if you've got anything to add, if I've forgotten anything, please. So look, we have a ton of customers out there. We've been in business for the last 14, 15 years. We first delivered AI capacity and capability in our products 13 years ago, 12 years ago, 13 years ago. It was a different type of model. So I mentioned this in my earlier session, but generative AI is not AI. It's a form of AI. And I'm going to speak specifically towards generative AI. This is the latest kind of incarnation of AI. So an LLM, for anybody who doesn't understand what LLMs are, That's the engine of generative AI. Think about it in a car analogy. The LLM is basically doing the work. It's a model, and it's the thing behind ChatGPT that's giving you the answers. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I'll use the word LLM, large language model. That's all you need to think about. It's an engine. Now, since November of 2022, when really kind of everything changed for the generative AI area, that's when ChatGPT first came on the market, went viral. Since then, as of a few days ago, February 26th, there are 523,000 different engines, different LLMs in the market. And that's not the only amount, but 500,000 different engines. So you might be asking yourself, well, why? And the answer is, and we'll get to, we'll unpack a little bit about how an LLM works in a moment, but fundamentally, that's because LLMs tend to be specialized for certain tasks. If anybody here has ever used Adobe Photoshop, there is an LLM underpinning its ability to do generative fill. When you kind of put the lasso around certain parts of your picture and you say, well, change that background from a mountain to a desert landscape. It's when you click on that button, that's an LLM predicting what the right set of pixels are that will make the result to your desire, which is basically make it a desert landscape. So different LLMs are different in capacity and capability. The LLM that we're interested in at VisibleThread is the one that's very good for analyzing text. And one of the best LLMs that is also deployable 100% behind your firewall, ergo it's 100% lockdown and secure, is a thing called Mistral 7B. So it's one of the 523,000 LLMs. It just happens to be the leading choice that most either system integrators, people like IBM Global Services, and ourselves as product vendors tend to be going towards. It's really capable, it's really competent, and it has comparable performance to things like GPT, which is the ChatGPT underpinning engine. The beauty about it is that we can distribute it, and you can run completely isolated in your environment. So if you're dealing with any kind of sensitive content, CUI, controlled but unclassified, in SCIFs, anything like that, that's your only option. You must be 100% behind your firewall. So that's our security stance. VisibleThread's calling card, when I think about the 11 of the top 15 government contractors that work with us, all of them, bar none, are behind the firewall. Maybe in a virtual cloud, or maybe on-premise running on a Red Hat system or running on a Windows system. Again, I apologize, a lot of tech stuff here, but we are talking about a product element, so bear with me. But that's an important thing. It's a huge element of our core product lines. Way before any of this ChatGPT stuff came along, we were always deployed in highly secure, regulated industries. Government, we've had one major government agency in the US source us on a sole source basis because we're the only vendor that can work inside their environment, 100% isolated. Good. Let me go to the next thing. So that's security. I just want to get that out of the way. Hallucinations. I'm forced to deal with techie stuff here, but let's kind of go there. The first bullet point, LLMs, large language models, the engines, these are what's referred to in computer science land as non-deterministic. What that effectively means is that when you ask it a question, it may give you a different result each time you ask it the question. It won't be consistent every time. So let me give you a simple example of this. If I say to you 2 + 2, and you say 4, then it can only be 4 ever. It can never be 3.8 or 4.9. It has to be 4. That is deterministic. One answer for a specific question. LLMs don't work like that. They work on the basis of predicting the next word that should come back to you based on the model. So it's a different behavior. It's not right or wrong, it's just different, okay? So they're not very good typically at doing high-end mathematical stuff. They are very good at giving you convincing answers, however, but often those answers can be a little bit incorrect.
Can
so
I
I'm going to give you an
there,
example of that. You can, of course, go for it.
So I guess the way I try to explain this to people is in that simple case of 2 + 2 = 4, ChatGPT doesn't know that 2 is a number and plus is an operator and 2 is another number. It doesn't know that, right? So LLMs they're based on predicting the next piece of text that should come after the prompt that you give it, okay? So for ChatGPT to be able to answer that 2 + 2 = 4, it needs to be trained on text that tells us that when I see 2 plus 2, the thing that comes after it is 4. The problem for most people is that you don't know what ChatGPT has been trained on. Okay, so, and also there's a degree of randomness in how it provides its answer. It's trained on billions and billions of data sets. If every single piece of data that it's trained on says 2 plus 2 equals 4, fantastic, you're going to get the correct answer, but that's not always the case. And there's a degree of randomness baked into how these models work, and you're not always going to get the same answer, and it's not always going to be right because the LLM doesn't actually understand that it's doing a computation because it doesn't know how to do that. Hopefully that might help.
Great, brilliant. That's a way better explanation than what I was giving. Thanks, On. So this is my little favorite example. I ran this actually yesterday or the day before in Copilot. So Copilot, I'm not sure if anybody's using Copilot at the moment, but I certainly am. It's really great for certain things, and it's really not so good at this question, which is, I asked it what the grade level of the sentence that you're seeing here. It's a 45-word sentence, the one a review of your account reflects. I'll demo that in a little bit. You'll see our answer to that. And it came back very confidently with a grade level of 12.3. Now, before I go any further, just in case anyone doesn't know what grade level is, it's a measure that is objective that allows you to assess complexity of a piece of text. The higher the grade level, the more complex the text is, the lower, the less complex. So typically when you're communicating with a normal, a standardly educated audience, you're looking at a grade level ideally to be accessible and understandable about 10, 11 or so. This actual grade level for this piece of text is 21.6. What can I infer from that? I can infer that it's incredibly complex. And we'll see this in a moment when we look at VT Writer and we show you the kind of way in which it operates. But the point about this slide is look at the hallucination. It's completely and utterly bonkers. It's completely wrong, but it's confidently right. And we have to be careful. So when you expose this stuff to standard users, the inclination that we as human beings have is to believe what these types of systems come back with. But it becomes almost akin to fake news, and you have to be very careful on that. Good. The reason it came back with the wrong thing, to Owen's point, is because underpinning grade level is a very clear and definitive mathematical formula. So here is the mathematical formula. This is what constitutes grade level. So this is a version of 2 plus 2. It has to be this. The LLM is guessing the answer, and it's utterly wrong. So I hope that makes sense, and I just want to kind of set the stage on that. So there are right and wrong places to apply generative AI to when you think about it from an automation standpoint. So brings us neatly to that point of which ones are they? What's the right use case? What's the right task we should apply this stuff to? I have a simple test, and I stole this a little bit. There was an excellent Harvard Business Review article came out about a month or so ago, and I kind of lifted these 3 quick questions from that. And they're really great because they really crystallize the decision process. If you need 100% accurate results, so that's an if. If the answer so remember the answer is if yes or no, do you need 100% accurate results? If you need 100% repeatability, in other words, I run the same question today and I run it next week, will I get the same answer? If you need that, if the answer is yes. And the third one here is if you need to know the underlying logic by which you got the results, which is a bit more esoteric. And if the answer is yes to that, if the answer is yes to any of these 3, you really shouldn't be using Gen AI. That's the conclusion. It's a stark point, but it's worth asking yourself the question. So again, you have to come back to the point, if I want to accurately find all the references to indemnification clauses in a contract, I really would be needing to think twice about using Gen AI for that task. It's search, and I require 100% accuracy on the search. Okay, cool. So that brings us neatly to the wrong task to apply Gen AI to. I'll get to the good ones in a moment, don't worry. I would never use Gen AI, and Owen and the team would never use Gen AI for things like user management, workspace management, credential management, sign in, sign out, dictionary search for terms and patterns. I mentioned that a moment ago. I'd never use it for slicing up a Word doc, outputting an Excel spreadsheet, and being able to recognize accurately the tables in the Word doc. I just wouldn't use it for that. It would guess, and it wouldn't get it right. And plus, you'd almost have to code the whole thing through prompts. It would be just a weird experience, and it would break. comparing docs, acronym checks, grade level, the list goes on. So it's not all bad news. There's plenty of good places you can apply it to, but let's stick with the bad news first. Don't apply it to these types of things. And most products, as it turns out, are basically a hybrid. They use Gen AI for certain tasks, and they use standard computational models for other tasks, deterministic models. So these are the right places to use Gen AI, just as a kind of a broad rule. And I'm specifically talking about the world that we operate in. Most of the people on this call will be generating, text primarily. Some of you may be using Adobe Photoshop and generative fill type stuff and graphic stuff. But in general, creative tasks such as text creation, first draft of a program management plan, first draft of a tech volume, first draft of an exec summary, that's perfect. But notice I said draft, first draft, because you have to check everything it comes back with, and you can't expect it to get it right. So it's an assistant. It moves you, as Steve Skeldon, who spoke with me in the first session, mentions, it removes the tyranny of the blank page and gives you a head start into something, which is somewhat sensible as a good position to start from. It's excellent at text simplification, really good at that. So rephrasing, and we'll see this is how we apply it in VT Writer specifically. Text summarization is pretty good at. But again, the point is you must always review the results. When good enough is fine, then generative AI can be very effective. Oh, and you're about to jump in?
Yeah, I think the key thing to remember is you should know how to verify the results, if that makes sense. Right. So if you're using it for to solve a problem or to help you with a task where you don't know how to verify the output, that's where danger lies. And I was reviewing Grok, the language model that's built by Twitter or X, and they've even stated that you should not use this to generate any output that you cannot verify, because you need to be able to verify the output and if it's accurate and correct, because you cannot rely on that, as we know, that they're not going to give you the same output each time, and also that whatever they're using to train their model on, you can't rely that it's correct, because you don't know. There's no way of you verifying the sources that they have used, be it ChatGPT or any other model. You don't know how to verify that the sources are accurate. So you need to be able to verify the output yourself.
Perfect. Thanks, all. So look, that gets us to the not use cases. Let's call it that. So this is the type of thing that you would not use generative AI for. This is shredding and searching docs. This is a screen grab of VT Docs 6.0. This is our latest release. And by the way, we've just rolled it out to hosted customers as well. So it's version 6 of VT Docs. Anybody on this call who hasn't signed up for an upgrade, please do so with our support team, or we can certainly reach out to you if you just ping us. But you would never use it for this task. I'm not going to give you an exhaustive list of tasks that you would never use it for, but this is another task that, again, is part of 6.0. It's a really nice capacity to identify acronyms. Again, a painful task, a tedious task that most normal people hate, but you still have to do it. Inconsistent acronyms, lack of definitions, usage before a definition, repeated definitions, all that kind of stuff, and generate an output that is a Word document with all of those injected into it as Word comments. So you just wouldn't use it for that. So I'm going to show you those two use cases and really reinforce this, I hope, as to where you shouldn't use it. And also, by dint of this, I'll give you a quick sneak preview, into VT Doc 6, which, as I say, is brand new, hot off the press, and we're very, very excited about this release. So let me see if I can manage to share my screen. Here we go. So I'll share my entire screen. So hopefully you can see that. Great. So, Owen, you might just confirm, you can see my screen, right? I'm hoping everybody else can see it as well.
Yep.
Fantastic. So look, this is VT Doc 6. I'm not going to give you a full demo of VT Doc 6. That's not the purpose of this. But this is the Oasis IDIQ that dropped last year. There was a small business version, an unrestricted version of it, about 160 pages. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to search this. These are specific items I'm looking for. I'm looking for damages, liquidated damages, indemnification. You can see they're color coded. You can see I'm doing some pattern matching here with the star going on. So find me everything beginning with damage, liability, et cetera, et cetera. And what I'm going to do here is basically check everything, and maybe just for convenience, check the entire thing. So what I've got on the right is a 100% accurate search. It's almost like Control F on steroids. like how long would it take you to individually go through each of these if you're a contracts person? Again, I'm looking at a contracts person perspective, but we can switch out this list up here and instead look for, you know, technical terminology or will, shall, must stuff, which is classic for proposals people. But in this case, I'm going to take this. None of this you could do very accurately using an LLM, and the richness of the interface is designed for the job to be done. Now I'm going to shred this. In other words, I'm going to whack it out into its component bits. Some options here. None of this would be LLM because it just wouldn't have the nuance for this. And then I'll see what we get out on the other side. And hopefully you'll see an Excel spreadsheet coming out, and you can kind of see the result. And the result is great because it's very actionable. It's basically a full breakout. You can see all of the content in the, excuse me, I hit the wrong thing there. All of the content here that you see. And if I scroll down, you'll start to see something interesting. There's the word repair. You'll see table structures broken out. So all of the elements that we've identified in that, and I'll just kind of collapse this to give you a better sense of the kind of colorization on this. So all of this stuff, what's nice about this is that these are the things that we wanted to flag. This is a spreadsheet. I can share this and work with my team and colleagues with this in a very clear way to support the effort that we're doing. Now, if you try to do this in LLMs, you'll get a part of the way there, but you'll kind of break down on the last mile. You might get some of this, but it won't necessarily be accurate, and you won't get the richness of the experience. So make no mistake, LLMs will not replace or displace this kind of flow, because this flow knows what it's doing. It knows the job it's trying to get done, and it requires determinism, i.e. not guesswork, to get the job done. The other interesting use case, which is the second example I wanted to show you a moment ago, is the acronym check. So here I am looking now at a response. So what I did a moment ago was shred the OASIS IDIQ. Now I'm looking at a response, and this is the extract acronym side. Again, not appropriate to use LLMs for this. Why? Because there's a mathematical formula around what constitutes an acronym, and there's pattern matching going on. Usage before definition in this case, repeated definitions, if we scroll down. And what I can do right now is I can actually export this as an annotated document. Again, this is new capability in version 6 of VT-Docs. We're getting a lot of very strong and favorable responses to this. So I've taken my original doc that I worked on. I've then basically put it into VT-Docs, and I've asked it to identify issues in the docs. And here's an issue, and it's directly injecting that as a Word comment. All of that requires engineering from Owen's team to understand how to interact with Word, how to use standard APIs to get all this stuff out. But again, it knows the job it's trying to do, and it's not guessing anything. So there you go. That's the idea of kind of the two examples. I hope that makes sense. Oh, and any other comments on that whole thing before I move on to the next section?
Not really. I guess from my perspective, the good example is the acronym check. You know, there's no way an LLM can tell you or identify a definition of an acronym unless it's already seen it, if that makes sense. Right? It needs to be trained.
Unless it's already been trained on that specific acronym. So it almost would need to know every acronym on the planet.
100%. So it doesn't understand the rules for trying to figure this stuff out because it's not a rules-based system. Right.
Exactly. Okay, great. So it's that, and that when I say computational model, effectively you're saying it in a more elegant way. It's a rules-based system. It's a kind of a logical-based system. Great. So look, let's talk about the good use cases now, and we'll talk about our own product roadmap in that context. So the good news is that we are releasing Gen AI capability basically in the first half, and it's going to be first exposed in the VT Writer product. So what I showed you a moment ago was about our VT Docs product, the review product. The VT Writer product is what we use as a secure generative AI enabled assistant for writing. So you're going to see it there, and I'll demo this in a moment. And then in the second half, and I'll talk a little bit more detail about this, we're going to extend VT Docs for the right use cases, leveraging generative AI for what it's really good at doing. So I'll talk in a moment about that. Good. So VT Writer. This is a great use case to apply it to. Today in VT Writer, we have a number of ways in which we can interact with it, but one of those ways is using a Microsoft Word plugin. And you get all the content in your screen in the editor scored by grade level, which is accurate and which is based on the mathematical formula I showed you a moment ago. And then we can actually get options as to how to rephrase this in a clearer way back from the LLM. So I'm going to show you that right now. So let me just share my screen. I do want to keep an eye on the time in case I don't run over here. Great. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Great. So this is a Microsoft Word plugin or add-in. Technically it's called an add-in. It augments an app, a web app that we can get the same interaction with as well. I'm signing in here. So again, all this kind of signing in stuff, all this kind of framework around all this is standard computational models. There's no LLM-y stuff going on there, nor should there be. So here we get a scoring mode showing, and we can see a breakdown of the content. Now, it just so happens that this particular piece of content is not specific to the proposal world, excuse me. It is a letter going from a financial institution to a third party, which is a business, and the business has gone bankrupt, so they need to do certain tasks in order to stay compliant and have obligations. So it opens with a review of your account reflects that you're currently in a situation of bankruptcy and that we've recorded the interest of your trustee. I'm not even going to read this. It's just really, really dense, turgid stuff. And you can tell because it scores 21.1 on grade level. So that is not a good, easy to understand and consume thing. And if you think about proposals in particular, you want to get single tone of voice. You want to get accessible, understandable, clear content so that our reviewers can give you a high mark. What's the Gen AI piece at play here? Well, it's the little kind of star and the simplify. So as you see, we found something that's really complex. I'm now going to direct my focus on that complex item. I'm going to click on the button. It's now hitting the large language model. It's feeding it this statement, and it's asking it to give me 3 different ways in which we could make it much simpler and more accessible. And here are the 3 different ways. Immediately, you'll notice that it could potentially go from 21.1 to 10.7, but make no mistake, we must review these options. We're not saying blindly click buttons here and insert stuff. So I'm going to review it. Your account shows that you're currently facing bankruptcy. Like that, that's correct. We have recorded your trustee's interest in bankruptcy in your property. Okay, that's fine, on which means we need your trustee's authorization. I'm going to take that. Great, perfect. Next one. And I could even kind of filter it down. I like to do this, just focus on long sentences, passive voice. We have an item called watchwords here, which allows you to customize stuff that you don't want to see. So for instance, if you think about the Shipleys of this world and the Lofels of this world, they will always say, don't use things like best of breed, etc. So you can customize the entire system also based on that. So you can kind of, it's almost guardrails around the LLM as well. So far, this is the LLM really focused on a task, a bit like the generative fill thing in Adobe Photoshop. We know this content is very complex. Therefore, we're saying you can simplify it directly here. And then you go off and reanalyze this thing. And once you reanalyze it, you start to see improvement. Meanwhile, we're tracking all of that. And we have various dashboards. And we have a reporting module that allows you to see and monitor all that content across the entire team. And indeed, in certain organizations, our biggest organization that's deployed on this thing has over 6,000 users across 50 plus teams. They're using that dashboard and that reporting side to make sure that people are actually generally creating single tone of voice across multiple channels, not just for proposals. The second thing which I think is really exciting about this release is this new mode called creator mode. This will look somewhat similar to you or familiar to you. And I'm just going to, let me just whack everything that's over here and we'll kind of clear the slate a bit. Okay, what is this creator mode? What's different about this from a regular chatbot interface? So far I was showing you scoring mode. Well, the difference here is that actually I can have predefined prompt shortcuts that can be centrally controlled and managed. And that's really nice because one of the challenges with Gen AI is to get good at prompting. But if I, for instance, hit this one, which is predefined, create an informational blog post about XYZ, make sure it's engaging. See the way it's kind of auto-populating the actual nuances. And the skill of great prompting is actually more and more detailed around the way you actually ask it to do stuff. So I kind of was doing this earlier. I'm kind of curious now what it will do. So I'm going to say, I'd like to create a blog post around compliance matrices. So let me just, great, let's see what it does. And it's off now generating based on its model. So this is Mistral 7B, completely secure, completely privately running within our environment here in VisibleThread. And it's going to give me a pretty decent answer, I hope. Let's see. Because I can't predict what the answer will be. It's entirely based on the model. And once we get that, we can see. What's nice about this, of course, is that we build this for good usability. So it's always great to be able to insert stuff like this. So there is a compliance matrix, a comprehensive guide to staying on the right side of the law. Great. And today's it's crucial why they matter. What is a compliance matrix? You know what's interesting? I ran this exact same question 2 hours ago, prior to the first session I did. And it came back with, the title was Compliance Matrix, the ultimate guide to how to build them. So it was completely different. So it'll always be a little bit different depending on what the model actually factors out each time. So this is the whole point about it. You can't expect it to have the same answer. And that's a kind of a hurdle people have to get over. So kind of, don't go there. How are these predefined prompts set up? I'm just going to show you very quickly where that's set up. This is the web interface for VT Writer. You can do pretty much all of what I've showed you in here as well. This is a new part, the start creating. And again, in the interest of time, I'll just kind of flick on. Where do you set these things up? You set them up here in the prompt area. It's a full-on editor. So if I, for instance, want to have specific prompts for specific tasks, create a draft RFI response, rewrite this to be below a word count, I haven't yet seen this in standard chat interfaces where you can just pre-set up the prompts directly that is exposed to the full team. Yes, you can do it in certain cases that is exposed to you as a single writer, but this is really important, the ability to set it up for the team to edit that set of prompts, which I can do very simply. So now I'm in edit mode. I can actually adjust this, introduce new prompts, new categories, and that will appear in the add-in and also appear in the interface that we've just seen a moment ago. So it's, when you think about rolling that out to a general organization, that kind of stuff matters. Behavior change is hard. And when you show something, you provide people a leg up to get good prompts out of the bat, then that's really helpful as well. Okay, let me go to VT Docs. Owen, are you still there?
I'm here. Yes.
Brilliant. I saw you disappearing from my screen. I wasn't quite sure. Great. So I've just talked about where we're integrating it into VT Writer. Let me just quickly go through this. This is where we're going with VT Docs. And this is the second half of this year. And we have an early adopter program, and many of our key accounts are already enrolled in that. So we're sharing much of this in early adopter because we want to make sure that it's right for our customers. So this is VT Docs. It's a new view in VT Docs that we'll be releasing, a content-oriented view where we're automatically factoring what's at play here. You can see in this case, we picked up infrared IR sensors. This is using a different type of AI, funnily enough. It's not generative AI. It's a different model. And we're isolating themes and topics and kind of noun phrases, technically. And then we found our infrared sensors automatically. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to find relevant content across our environment? And specifically, that relevant content could well come from something like a SharePoint library or whatnot. So this is the area known as RAG, R-A-G, and that's where we're very committed to in terms of the actual problem space that our customers are having. Most of our customers want to find similar past performance. They want to find resumes that might be appropriate for this particular pursuit. So you have to accept the fact that the knowledge doesn't exist in our system and probably won't in most organizations. It's external. And how we do that, and Owen, I might just kind of defer to you at this stage,
Sure.
And maybe walk us through some of this stuff.
Yeah, so one of the key issues using LLMs is that the knowledge in there is pre-baked. So they are what they eat, if you like. So whatever they're trained on, that's what they know about. So how do you use LLMs and generative AI to talk to your knowledge base? So that the sum total of information that you've gleaned over years of your operation, so be it past performance, be it pricing lists, whatever's in your knowledge base. So there's three ways you can potentially do it. One is you can fine tune the LLM, but that's very, very computationally and financially expensive to do and not that easy. Two is you can put the entire set of your knowledge base in a prompt, but again, that's not realistic, and it's also computationally very expensive. The final way, and the most common way people are doing this, is using Retrieval Augmented Generation. And what effectively allows you to do is it allows you to boost or prime the prompt that you're giving to the LLM with the correct sections of your knowledge base. So effectively what you're doing is you're indexing your knowledge base, no matter wherever those documents that you currently store, wherever they're stored, you're going to index them using what's called a vector database. And what that allows us to do is when we're searching for a particular phrase or a sentence, we will then be able to find relevant or similar parts of your knowledge base that closely match that phrase or that sentence. We then take those snippets and we prime the prompt to the LLM using those snippets. So what we're saying to the LLM is, answer this question based on your general knowledge that you've been trained on, but in addition with this specific domain knowledge that you now know about, and it's a specific subset of your knowledge base that we found. So that's effectively what RAG is doing. And it's a very powerful way to reduce hallucinations because you're priming it with knowledge that you specifically know and specifically care about. And the second key thing about it is because you have verified the content that's in your knowledge base, you now are going to get responses that you can verify the sources from. So in other words, you're getting output that you can now verify that is correct because you know that's coming from your knowledge base. Hopefully that makes sense.
Great, thanks, Owen. I have to admit, you were kind of a bit scratchy on the audio there. I'm not sure if everybody picked up all of that. So I'll just kind of summarize what you were saying. So I think Owen's big points were RAG is a way in which you can, you can augment the LLM with your proprietary knowledge. And the second big advantage of that, so therefore it gives you a more accurate result. It's still prone to hallucinations, but it's likely to give you a better result. And the second major advantage of RAG is that it can give you citations, in other words, reference back to the original documents that are prompting the response. So they're the two big areas. Great stuff. Thanks for that, On. Let's rapidly move on because we're going to be out of time for questions. This is, again, we'll kind of move on in this, and I might just kind of summarize this briefly in the interest of time, On. I was going to allow you to do all this, but look, the point about our stuff is that I've seen a question in the chat saying, what's the underpinning kind of LLM that we're using? In the example that I was showing you a moment ago, it's a thing called Mistral 7B. It's a 7 billion parameter model. It's a fantastically performant and capable model. And that's what I was asking, that was the engine of the machine that I was asking a moment ago in those questions in live terms. Completely isolated. The beauty about Mistral is that you can, and it's not just Mistral, there's a number of models that are quite capable and performant that are out there. You can deploy that completely behind your firewall. They're known as open models. GPT and Gemini, these are closed models. In other words, they're proprietary to the owner. In the case of GPT, it's OpenAI. In the case of Gemini, it's Google. But certainly there is a trend, an increasing trend for many enterprises, certainly, to go down the road of actually using open and distributable models like Mistral. So that's what we're doing. The beauty is we're shipping our product with an ability to point at your LLM of choice. So we'll use Mistral if you don't have anything, or we'll use yours if you would prefer us to hook it in, and that'll be a configurable setting within the applications. So don't worry too much about that. The rest of this, a lot of this, 15 years of engineering with a very large team going into what is now VT Docs and VT Writer. We will be adding generative AI onto that. We will not be replacing our existing stuff with generative AI simply because it's the wrong use case for doing that kind of stuff. So it's fantastic at certain jobs, and I hate to sound like a broken record, but really be careful that you don't think it's a silver bullet. If you have a generative AI hammer, everything becomes a nail. I stole that, by the way. That was in the Harvard Business Review report, which I really love, but you get the point. Be considerate about how you approach this stuff and try to make sure that you're not, even with vendors like us, ask them questions. Do you think generative AI does everything for you, and can you show provable stuff? Demos always come across as really impressive in Gen AI land. That's just the nature of them. It's only when you dig deeper and you assess the veracity of the results that you start to realize, maybe that's not quite what I thought. Maybe it's not giving me the accuracy I need, and maybe I need to rethink my approach. So just be more considered about it than just saying, it looks great, isn't it great, we'll buy it. Good. This is our release plan. We are basically, as I mentioned, 6.0 of VT Docs is hot off the press. We're literally putting it out this week for customer-hosted customers. We put that live in December for our VisibleThread cloud customers. So these are customers who use our own cloud. But as I say, I'd say certainly the majority, if not all of our, call them serious regulated customers, the top government contractors, government agencies in Australia, Canada, the US, they are deployed behind the firewall, either on a private cloud or on premise. So it takes us about 2 to 3 months typically after going to our own cloud to actually harden down and certify for all the various environments that we support. So we support a lot of different environments, Windows deployments, Red Hat, and all of that is engineering time. It's all quality time. And it's largely time that, you know, you can do flashy demoware and this kind of stuff and it'll look great, but you may get tripped up with your IT colleagues where they can't support the environment that you're trying to buy in. Same thing goes if you're building internally, just be conscious that you're going to have to maintain this stuff. It does cost, it mounts up. It's easy to get the initial wedge and get the whiz-bangy stuff. It's hard to get the kind of final full system deployed. VT Writer for us 5.0, which is what I just demoed, that's currently an early adopter release. And we're basically releasing to our cloud a formal release of that in the April-May timeframe. And then that'll follow by a full release running behind the firewall for all our customers in the end of Q2 timeframe. So you'll see that as well. 7.0 VT Docs, which is basically our AI-enabled, or sorry, generative AI-enabled, because as I say, we already use AI for a lot of tasks. Generative AI-enabled of VT Docs, you'll see that in the kind of Q3 timeframe, and then the final hardened version of that you'll see in the Q4 timeframe. We don't ever want to overpromise. We want to be realistic and transparent about our delivery cycles. So this is as much as we can do on that front. So that all said, I know we've had some questions in the chat. Michal, I'm not sure if you're out there or if you've seen anything interesting that you want to bring to our attention, but if there is anything.
What I'm going to do, so I think there's a lot of questions in the chat, and we are running up at the end of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to promo the next session, and I'm going to put the attendee link in the chat. And anyone that wants to move to the next session can. This will be recorded, but me, Fergal, and Owen will stay here. We'll answer all the questions. So if you want to stay here, you absolutely can. Neil's session is recorded. This session is all recorded. You'll be able to kind of summarize later. But if you do want to skip ahead, our next session is with Neil. Sorry, there. Yeah, so our next session is with Neil McDonald. He's going to talk about small businesses in the government contracting area. His focus is with the GovCon Chamber of Commerce. He's going to talk about some tactical things you can do with AI to kind of grow your business. Neil is a consultant that works with an awful lot of industries and different organizations that we've seen before. So if you want to skip ahead, I'm going to put a link in the attendee chat, and you can. But since we're here with Fergal and Owen, I'll start the questions off on Owen and Fergal. One of the biggest questions was, I know you've already kind of explained it, but maybe just a little bit more detail in terms of, you know, why is this secure when others aren't? You know, like, well, that seems to be a running theme. Why is this so secure?
Yeah, so, and Owen, you'll have a view as well, but fundamentally, it's not anything to do with the technology stack. It's to do with how it's deployed. So it's secure by dint of the fact that it's running completely isolated within your environment as a customer. And if you think about industries like healthcare, for instance, where there's PII, personally identified information, going into an LLM, the issue is not going into an LLM. The issue is actually going outside your firewall. So when I think about all our customers, bar none, the major customers, they're all running behind their firewall. We're 100% isolated. We fill out very nasty 150-page or 150-question questionnaires, InfoSec questionnaires that take us quite some time to do, because there is an appropriate and correct focus on security. It doesn't matter what the hell the product does. If the data goes outside, then that's bad. So it's not necessarily the tech stack, it's the provisioning of the tech stack in the context of an environment. That's the key thing that makes it secure. So when we say secure, when we say the only AI, or not the only, but a secure AI writing assistant, what we mean is that we can deploy completely 100% isolated. I'll just give you a quick anecdote. We have a major US government agency as a customer, so we sell direct to US agencies as well as Canadian and Australian agencies, where they sole sourced the purchase of VT Writer on 2 basis points. The first was security. We were the only vendor they could find that would run completely internally to them. Something like Grammarly didn't. You can't deploy it behind your firewall. It has to run on the Grammarly cloud. Not taking pop shots at Grammarly, it's more the fact that it just doesn't satisfy the security needs. And we've seen that time and time again. The second justification that this agency made, was we were the only ones with a reporting module that covered out all of the teams, showing the engagement and showing the improvement by team, by user. And those reporting metrics were vital for them because they needed to show improvement to effectively the leadership team. That said, we have this change management plan. It is to get people to write clearly and more accessibly to both citizens and businesses and everybody they interact with. And they needed to track and report on that to the leadership team. So those 2 things, security was the key differentiation. And that's what we mean by secure when we say that. And then the second slightly incidental rationale from their standpoint was the reporting capacity of VT Writer.
Just from my perspective on that question, Michal, what Fergal demoed a few moments ago, you will be able to deploy that on your network and disconnect from the internet, and it'll work 100%. So I guess that's the key thing to remember, is that it has no dependency on talking outside your corporate network. So you don't have to be in a situation where you need to trust a third party with the information. You don't need to. The information never leaves your network. And from an IT perspective, when we deploy our solutions, we always give the IT organization and our customers control over how to deploy them, where to deploy them. We don't dictate that. We work with them to figure out what's the best solution to fit their needs. They are in complete control of how to run it and how to deploy it. And that's a really important factor.
Very good.
So just to re-summarize that on, you're still a bit sketchy on the audio, but I think your key point is that we can run 100% isolated on the network. You can unplug from the internet. We will run perfectly. What I demoed earlier is exactly runnable within your organization.
Correct.
Kevin has a bit of a statement in terms of, is the VT proposition, we provide you guardrails for your use of LLM, allowing your staff to work in a user-friendly environment that is also integrated with VT tools that they are familiar with. Is that our new website logo? Is that what it's going to be?
That's broadly correct. I'd just be a little careful about one word. So words matter in this context. Guardrails have a very specific meaning for generative AI, and guardrails typically are a way to narrow what the LLM can give you. But in the broader sense of what guardrails means, generally 100% correct, but just that one word. But everything that Kevin says is accurate.
Great. There's a couple of questions that I'm going to roll together. Fergal, when you showed kind of the future of VT Docs and looking at past performance or past proposals, there was a couple of questions in a row around that in regards, where will it pull those documents from? Is that a way of training the LLM in terms of, if I put my documents in there, my LLM is going to be more customized to us in the way we talk? What's your view on that?
Yeah, okay, so it's a brilliant question. So the first thing I'm going to restate, this will be by and large, I mean, I can't imagine anybody who's asking these questions is going to be using the public cloud LLM version of either of our products. So it's going to be likely secure, 100% isolated. The second thing is the LLM is effectively not training on the documents you feed it or any content you feed it. When you ask a chatbot, give me a recipe to bake a cake or give me an executive summary or whatever it might be, you're not training that LLM. It's basically already trained. In the context of how we're envisaging it, this phrase, Retrieval Augmented Generation, RAG, yet another three-letter acronym for us to digest and get familiar with, but RAG is the pattern by which you can influence the LLM's activity with your proprietary data. So effectively, explained a little bit earlier, but it might have been hard to hear, but the way in which RAG works is that it allows you to give more succinct, not so much succinct, but more relevant answers back, either through a chatbot or through a more directed button interface, you know, kind of a more directed form in the user interface, such that you're going to get a better quality outcome. So the answer here is, let me give you a tangible. If I say, let's say I'm dealing with a performance work statement, and it's in the IT space, and it talks about, you know, cybersecurity and, you know, ISO standards and various other bits and pieces. A classic use case would be, well, let's say I'm a capture person. Where have I done this type of stuff before? Or maybe I want to throw the entire PWS itself into the LLM and say, well, where have I done this type of stuff before? A good enough answer on this is returning 20 docs out of a total, you know, let's say for the sake of round numbers, there was 100 docs out there, each doc representing a pursuit. That will be in a SharePoint library. Getting back the 20 most relevant docs, this is referred to as approximate near neighbor approaches, where you're getting a relevancy score. And then you as a human being make the determination as to what the best content is that you can reuse. So you're combining both LLMs with search and approximation, which is what these things are very good at. And I'll mention vector databases. That's what vector databases are very good at. You embed all the content of a document into a database. So now it gets very good at actually this approximation searching. Then you can go into more detail. Then you can use the classic stuff within VT Docs to do 100% accurate searching. So it's kind of part of a multi-step process.
Very good. Fergal, you were demoing 6.0 and you were showing the new capabilities. Little bit of feedback on that as well. For people
Sure.
who that's new to, please put in the form when you're filling out your feedback. If you want us to talk to you about 6.0, if you're already a customer and it's new to you, just mention it there and we'll reach out to you straight away and we'll get you set up. But there was a question in regards, you know, does it search through tables and can it search through graphics? Fergal, I know there's two different pieces. Two
different. So the answer is absolutely in tables. Graphics is something that we actually are looking at. So currently we do not search graphics today, but that's actually an interesting area that LLMs can have a part to play in, searching graphics. So it's something that's in our backlog, and we use the word backlog loosely to mean stuff that we are researching, stuff that we're looking to do. So you can expect more news on that. We don't tend to give absolute timelines by which we will deliver certain capability, because what we'll do is we'll actually put it in the mix with all the various other requests and extensions that we have for the product, and then we'll prioritize accordingly. But certainly, yes to the first question, tables, no currently to the second question, but likely that you'll see more about that in future releases.
I think, unless there's any other questions from the audience, I'll just pass to Fergal and Owen one last time. Do you have any final kind of statements, pieces for the audience?
Do you want to go?
Yeah,
I've been talking.
I'm not sure if people can hear me. But
seems better now. Go for it.
I'm the miracles of technology. I think one takeaway I'd like people to get from this is that LLMs are not a one-size-fits-all. They are fantastic technology, right? They're incredible evolution of AI. However, the way I see them really being best utilized going forward is as a component of our bigger system, right? So I think Fergal had a slide there where he showed where our platform is going to utilize the LLM in combination with all the other good things that we already do, right? And that will bring our platform to a much better place. But it's not generative AI alone. It's generative AI used in combination with other hard problem solving things, right? So and that's the best way, I think. I think what you're going to see with generative AI over the next year, there'll be an explosion of tools and applications out there, and then it'll shrink again, because people realize this is not the best technology to solve this problem, but it's the best technology to solve this problem when I combine it with this other technology. And that's what's going to happen. And that's the way we're bringing the platform.
Unfortunately, your gems of wisdom were going so well on, and then they kind of faded out at the end. So I think you're to summarize what you're saying, at least. I know.
Yeah.
Maybe you're being, it's Big Brother stuff. No, your point is well made. I mean, that's a very interesting point that you just made about the kind of, it'll go into a kind of a proliferation of tools, and people will be doing all kinds of demoware tools, which you typically get when you get new evolutions of technology, and then it'll kind of balance out. And certain companies will go out of business. Certain companies or certain customers will realize actually this is slightly over promising territory, and then you get the kind of what Gartner refers to as the kind of it goes from the trough of disillusionment where people are is this like you go beyond toy use cases to real ones, and then you get into this kind of plateau of actual productivity. So I suspect that will happen in the next year to 18 months.
Very good. Well, I think we're kind of out of questions. There's a couple. There's a few small ones there that we'll definitely respond to one. I think just to summarize as well, if you do want to have a conversation with us, if you want to kind of talk more specifically about your use case, you absolutely can do that. Please mention it in the feedback or book a demo or a briefing on the console. Feel free to do that. We'd love your feedback on this session. So that's on the right-hand side. So if you'd like to give us your feedback, let us know what you think. We'd love to have a chat with you. A lot of people have asked about resources and where to find information. There's a lot of resources underneath us. I'm going to point at two things that were heavily downloaded on this session. One, VT University, people signing up to VT University, which is great. VT University is an online platform to learn about our product. What Fergal demoed in particular about 6.0, the color coding, the searchability, being able to kind of define your libraries and your dictionaries, that's all really well documented and well explained on VT University. It's a great resource to get involved in. And if you're looking for more insight in terms of LLMs and hallucinations and that kind of stuff, I'd point you towards Fergal's newsletter on LinkedIn. Every 2 weeks, there's articles being published. They're talking about different scenarios and different things that are live in the public eye. I think it's a really good way of just skilling up and hearing from Fergal and the team and the customers he's dealing with.
Michal, can I just put a final word? I completely forgot about this, but for anybody on the audience or in the audience who's kind of in the Virginia, DC, Maryland area, I'm doing an in-person session on the 27th of March. Love to see you there. Everybody's welcome. Really kind of do a bit of a deep dive on VTDocs 6.0. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about AI as well if people wish. So it's quite flexible, kind of a 2.5-hour, 3-hour morning session on the 27th of March. I think it's in Tyson's, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Michal? It's Tyson, sorry.
Tyson.
So that'd be great. Anybody who's on this session, please don't be shy. Love to see you.
Absolutely. And again, noted in the feedback if you want more information. More than happy to. Okay. Well, thank you, Owen. Thank you, Fergal. Neil has started, so Neil's presentation is about 10 minutes in. You'll be moved directly over there. So once we turn off this webcast, we'll go straight into his presentation. And feel free to drop into us for all the presentations throughout today. I think this is number 3 of 10, so we're still going. And if all will be recorded and slides will be sent next week. So thank you for joining. Thank you, Owen. Thank you, Fergal. And see you all soon.
Take care. Thanks, guys.